بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم الحكيم. اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. Today, inshallah, we reached the chapter Bab al-Ghusl, or the chapter of Ghusl. How do you translate Ghusl? How do they translate Ghusl? What do they say? I didn't even think. What's the translation for Ghusl? I want a nice one. Oh, they call it major ritual impurity. You have to. Nah. Major ritual impurity. A ritual bath. All right. So we'll explain it, right? So today, inshallah, we're going to cover Bab al-Ghusl, or the chapter of al-Ghusl, right? We put a disclaimer in the beginning of this class. This class is more so for a mature audience. At least be aware that we're going to be talking about some topics that are maybe a bit sensitive. However, Islam discusses it, and we will discuss it because it's part of our religion. So from that point, this is to give everybody a disclaimer before maybe some people are sitting down with their families, etc. Understand that this class may not be age appropriate for everyone. At any event, we'll start with the first thing. What is a ghusl? Can anybody tell me what a ghusl is? What is a ghusl? If you say I have to make a ghusl, I have to take a ghusl, make a ghusl. What's a ghusl? I want your definition. So just a bath or a form of purification. All right, taking a bath. What's a ghusl? You ever heard of a ghusl? What is it? Just taking a bath. Huh? To be sure of yourself? Oh, purify yourself. Okay. What about you, Sheikh? Wash the body in a particular way. From the text. Did you read before class? You probably did. So you can be back from wash the major impurities off. Wash the major impurities off. All right. So some people said making a ghusl is taking a bath, huh? Is there a certain way you have to take a bath? There's a certain way you have to make a ghusl? It is? Does somebody in the back? Somebody said something? What did she say? Where's that microphone? How do you make a ghusl? Before we talk about how do we make a ghusl, what are some of the things that would necessitate us to make a ghusl? Why would you need to make a ghusl? Stamina. Janaba. What's janaba? He doesn't know what janaba means. Sexual impurities. Having intercourse. Okay. So there are six things. There are six things that would necessitate a person to make a ghusl, right? What's the first thing? Is that mic on, Sheikh? It's on. Did you tap it? Okay. It's not on. Okay. Did you say something, sister? I guess not. So if a person has to make a ghusl, I need to know what are some things that will necessitate a person making a ghusl? Ejaculation. What else? That's it? Huh? Jum'ah? I said necessitate, which means you must make a ghusl. Many of the scholars hold making a ghusl is recommended on Jum'ah, not necessarily wajib. What else? Well, you have to, the dead body, you have to ghusl a dead body. So if a person dies, that body has to have a ghusl, right? All right, what else? Hand me that blue cord right here. Yeah. Well, hand it. You said what now? What's the next one? When a woman comes off of her menses. Okay, that's 3. What else? Give me another one. After childbirth. Okay, that's 4. What else? That's pretty much in a nutshell. We're missing 2, but we're going to talk about them. All right. Any questions? Okay, next part. Is there a specific way a person has to make a ghusl? How many ways can a person make a ghusl? Huh? How many ways can a person make a ghusl? Is there making a ghusl only one way? Is it 2 ways? Is it 3 ways? Is it 4 ways? You said no. No to what? There's only one way. So it's more than one way to make a ghusl? What are the ways? So a man and a woman is the same for both.
I was thinking that, like, when a woman comes off her menses, I always talk about one of the classes that when she comes off her menses, she has to make a ghusl so that the water, like, she has braids, she has to take the braids out, and the water has to.
Either way you look at a ghusl, the water has to touch the scalp.
Okay.
So yeah. So it's 2 ways to make a ghusl. All right, what are they?
It's like the simple, just the basic, where you can run the water gets all over your body from the head to your toes.
Who told you that?
It's in one class, and I can't remember that.
Do you agree with him? Is there more than one way to make a ghusl?
I have something to say.
I'm sorry?
I have something to say.
Sure.
Can I take a guess?
Sure, go ahead.
3 ways. The first way, I believe, 3 ways. You make wudu first.
Okay.
Then you wash your private area. That's all I have for now.
Okay. No, I mean, like, how you make a ghusl, Sheikh? I'm not trying to put nobody on the spot. Just, yeah, how would you make a ghusl? Like, first of all, I don't even want the details. I want to know how many ways are there to make a ghusl. I understand you know how to make a ghusl, Sheikh. I'm not questioning. The 2 ways to make a ghusl. Okay. What about you, young man? You don't know. All right. So today's class, inshallah, we're going to cover what are the things that necessitate a ghusl and how many ways there are to make a ghusl. There are 2 ways. Like you said. Yeah, it's 2 ways. And we're going to talk about that, inshallah, in detail. Any questions before we get started? Yes. Yeah. All right. So the way this chapter goes is very detailed. All right. So I need you guys to follow along. It's quite explicit, meaning that they're going to explain things in ways that maybe you can't expect them to be, or you don't expect them to be explained. They're very vivid in their description of how a wudu should be performed. All right. So the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَمُوجِبُهُ خُرُوجَ الْمَنِي دَفْقًا بِلَذَّةٍ. So the first thing the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, the things that necessitate a ghusl, the first thing that he mentions is khuruj al-mani. Mani is semen, right? Khuruj al-mani, it means to ejaculate sperm, for sperm to come out, right? And then he says, dafqan biladatan, that, and he explains that it has to shoot out with desire. It has to come out with desire, right? And the reason why they mention that is because he says la biduniha, not without it, meaning it has to come out from a person that is, the first one is that it comes out with thrust and with desire, right? And he says la biduniha, not meaning, because either way you look at it, you still have to make a ghusl. But what he's saying is min ghairi na'im, not from a person that is sleeping. However, what also falls into that category is that if a person has nocturnal emission, right, which is a fancy way of saying having a wet dream, right? If a person has a wet dream, then this also necessitates a ghusl. And he says, وَإِنْ انْتَقَلَ وَلَمْ يَخْرُجْ اِغْتَسَلَ لَهُ. All of this is under the first part. So the next part, it says, if a person feels like they're getting ready to ejaculate, but they don't, meaning if a person feels like it's about to come out and they hold it, this also necessitates a ghusl. Does that make sense? So then what we're looking at here is not just the fact that it comes out, but the fact that it moved in the body, and you felt it move in the body, it also necessitates a ghusl. Does that make sense? طيب. Yes. Okay. It says, فَإِنْ خَرَجَ بَعْدُهُ لَمْ يُعِدْهُ. So let's say, for example, a person, he makes a ghusl, even though he felt the sperm moving through his penis, if you will, and it doesn't come out, and that necessitates a ghusl, right? So now that person makes a ghusl. After the ghusl, the semen comes out. The semen comes out. Does he have to make another ghusl? What do you do in that case? Does that make sense? Does the question make sense? What do you do in that case? Huh? Make another ghusl. La. In this case, you just make wudu. You make wudu. Why? Because you already made a ghusl. So the fact that the ghusl was for the semen moving in the body, then there's no need to make it again if it comes out after you make a ghusl without anything else. Yes. I'm sorry? Is sperm semen najis? No. What's najis is medhi. Is the stuff that comes before semen. That's considered najis. Is that clear? However, it does necessitate a ghusl. Medhi, meaning that which comes out before sperm or before semen, that necessitates wudu, and semen necessitates what? A ghusl. Is that clear? Understand? Go ahead. I can't hear you, Sheikh.
You said that prior to this,
you want to grab the mic? Say again.
You said when the semen doesn't come out, it's just, even though it moves in your body, it's just,
Meaning you're about to ejaculate, but you don't. Right? Just that transportation or that transport of semen in your body, it necessitates for you to make a ghusl.
after that,
If you make the ghusl, and after you make the ghusl and then the semen comes out, you don't have to make another ghusl. You just have to make wudu. The ulama don't mention the time period. Rather, it's the mere fact that now, if it came out because you had intercourse again, then that's something different. But if it just comes out after you make a ghusl and you go on about your way, like shortly thereafter, and it comes out after the ghusl, then you make a wudu. Okay? Is that clear? Right. So the next thing that would necessitate, so that was the first part that would necessitate the ghusl, right? Khuruj al-mani. All right. The next part is تغييب حشفة أصلية في فرج أصلي قبلا كان أو دبرا. Now we're going to talk about this in some detail. So the next thing, the Shaykh Rahimahullah, he says that تغييب حشفة. This means for a person's penis to go into a woman's vagina, if it hides in there, if it goes inside of there, asliyan. It says asliyan, meaning that it cannot be, it has to be real, meaning it can't be something that's fake for a man and or for a woman. This is what the scholars talk about, right? So you said, what does that even mean? Could be other things that people use, right? Right? But the thing here is it says taghibu means to hide. So it means for a male penis to be inside of a woman's vagina. That alone necessitates a ghusl. Whether there's ejaculation or not. Whether the sperm moved in the body or not. Just the mere fact that it touched or entered slightly, it necessitates a ghusl. It necessitates a ghusl. So then the next part, it mentions qubalan kana aw dubaran. This means even if you, she's like, I don't want to be here. Even if it was in the vagina or dubaran. Dubaran here, it means that if a person were to insert their penis in the anus, right? Now, the problem with that is this is haram to begin with. It's haram for a man to have sex with a woman in her anus, right? This is impermissible in Islam. Even though it's impermissible, there are still rulings associated with it. If a person were to do that, then it would also necessitate a ghusl. It would also necessitate a ghusl. Any questions about that? Questions? Right. So now they're going to get into some other topics that the scholars discuss, but it's also issues that are impermissible, right? So it says, "Walau min bahimatin," if a man, woman, etc., were to have intercourse with an animal, talks about this, right? With an animal, that would also necessitate a ghusl, or a deceased person. We have people that are sick. They have all types of fetishes, if you will. If someone were to have intercourse with a deceased person or a corpse, this would also necessitate a ghusl, even though this is a crime and it's haram, but it doesn't take away from the fact that a person that does this may be a Muslim, may have some issues, right? In a case like that, what do you do? In a case like that, it is still haram, but they will still be required to make a ghusl. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? All right. So the third thing is Islamu kafirin. If a non-Muslim becomes Muslim, this would also necessitate a ghusl, according to many of the scholars of Al-Islam. This would also necessitate a ghusl. Any questions about that? No. Good. The next one, wamotin or wamotun. If a person dies, you have to make a ghusl for them. Is that clear? So when they say wash the body, this means giving that person a ghusl. This means giving that person a ghusl. That's the fourth one. The fifth one is hayd. Hayd. If a woman is on her menses, once her menses is up, she is required to make a ghusl. And the last one is nifasun. What is nifas? Nifas is after a woman gives childbirth or has a baby. After a woman has a child, she must then make a ghusl once the postpartum bleeding stops. Is that clear? It says, La wiladatun ariyatun an dam. And then the scholars come up with an exception. They say if a woman has a child without bleeding, if a woman has a child and there's no blood, then in this case she doesn't have to make a ghusl. However, this may be something that's impossible to see, right? This may be something that's highly unlikely. However, it is something that the scholars discuss, right? The next one. وَمَنْ لَزِمَهُ الْغُسْلُ حَرَمَ عَلَيْهِ قِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ. If a person has to make a ghusl, what are some of the things that you can't do? What does that mean? If a person has to make a ghusl, if they're in a state of janaba, as it's called, what are some of the things you're not allowed to do? You're not allowed to pray. Good. What else? You're not allowed to touch the mushaf if you have to make wudu, meaning if you use the bathroom. But here it says, وَمَنْ لَزِمَهُ الْغُسْلُ حَرُمَ عَلَيْهِ قِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ. If a person has to make a ghusl, they cannot read the Quran. What does that mean? And what's the difference between this and when we studied about making wudu, you can't read the Quran? What's the difference? Is there a difference or is it the same? Well, it said read. Both said qira'atul Quran, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, I'm saying it's a difference between reciting. Like, you don't necessarily need the what's actually reciting.
So what are you saying?
And what the wudu will be connected to the actual what's happening. But with the
So here it says, يَحْرُمُ عَلَى مُحْدِثِ مَسْحُ الْمُصْحَفِ. So it's haram for the one that has to make wudu for them to touch the mushaf, right? And then here it says, وَحَرَمَ عَلَيْهِ قِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ. And it's haram for them to read the Quran. So what does that mean? Do they mean the same thing? Is there a difference? You say the same. What about you? You don't think it's the same?
because one is connected to the what's happening, one is connected to anything in the Quran. Like whether it's reciting or reading.
So it's a difference.
To me,
All right. What about you, Sheikh? What do you think? Low Allah. So this is mahala ta'lim. We're learning, so you can take a guess. Nobody's gonna say nothing. What do you think? Right now, if you had to make a ghusl, and I'm like, I need you to grab the Quran for me. Can you do that? If I sorry, recite al-Fatiha for me. Can you do that? Recite. I didn't say touch the mushaf. I said, so if you're in a state of janaba, you have to make a ghusl. Can you grab the mushaf and read from it? No. Can you recite the Quran? You can. What do you think? What does that no mean? You don't know. Allahu Alam. Cool. What you think, Sheikh? You think it's the same? What do you think? So it's gonna take. I'm asking you. So he's correct. And what he's saying? You can't touch it. You can't read from it. All right. So understand this. If a person is in the state of janaba, this means that you need to make a ghusl. All right. Whoever has to make a ghusl in this case, they say that this person cannot recite the Quran. If a person is in a state of sexual impurity, they say he cannot recite. Recite meaning I don't have the Quran with me, but I'm reciting Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin, etc. You cannot do that, right? If a person has to make a ghusl. Is that clear? طيب. It says, وَلَهُ قَوْلَ مَنْ وَافَقَ قُرْآنًا. It's okay for that person to make a statement that agrees with an ayah in the Quran. Yes. Some say that. Some say that. But we also find that in cases with women on their menses, right? In that case, Allahu Alam. But I do see in cases like that, some of the early men say in those cases, the women, if they have to recite, they can recite for a test or a quiz or something like that. But Allahu Alam. Right now, we're just sticking to the speech of the author. If you want to get into more details, we can kind of look at that in a more detailed look later. But right now, according to the author here, وَغُسْلُ حَرَمَ عَلَيْهِ قِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ. That is haram for a person. And in this case in particular, many scholars say they're referring to janaba, right? Many of those cases that refer to janaba. طيب. The next one it says, وَيَعْبُرُ الْمَسْجِدِ لِحَاجَةٍ وَلَا يَلْبَثُ فِيهِ بِغَيْرِ وُضُوءٍ. If a person were to enter into the masjid, if a person were to enter into the masjid and they're in a state of janaba, they say it's permissible to walk through the masjid, meaning if they're coming to the back and walking through the front, but they say, and that's only out of necessity. And it says, وَلَا يَلْبَثُ. However, they can't sit in the masjid for no period of time, for a long period of time. بِغَيْرِ wudu, except that they have to make wudu. Now listen to this. What they're saying is that a person who needs to make a wudu, a person who needs to make a ghusl, the only time that person can sit in the masjid, if a person's in a state of sexual impurity, is that they have to make wudu first before they sit down. Even though that wudu does not allow them to pray, allow them to touch the mushaf, allow them to do anything else, the only thing that wudu allows them to do is sit in the masjid. All right, now they're going to mention some of the things that are sunnah for a person to make wudu. All right, it says, "Man ghassala maytan." So whoever washes a deceased body, is sunnah for that person to make wudu. Is that clear? It says, "Man ghassala maytan aw afaqa min jununin." So even with that, a brother asks about women reciting Quran on their menses, right? Even with that, because as I read this, I'm thinking about this issue, right? Even with that, understand, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that women have deficiencies in some areas, right? One of the deficiencies is that a woman can't pray when her menses is on, whereas a man can pray all the time. In the cases like this, if we take this position here that the woman can't recite the Quran, that means while your menses is on, you're prevented from reciting the book of Allah. Whereas a man is never prevented from reciting the book of Allah. So that makes sense? So even if you look at this position here, right? Even with this position, is understood that, okay, there's a difference between men and women as it relates to these acts of worship. So he says, وَمَنْ غَسَّلَ مَيْتًا أَوْ أَفَاقَ جُنُونًا. So whoever washes a body, or أَفَاقَ مِنْ جُنُونٍ, if a person lost their mind and they gained their senses after that, right? In this case, it's sunnah for that person to make a ghusl. Likewise, إِقْمَاءٌ بِلَا حُلْم. If a person passes out and they don't have any type of wet dreams, etc., there's also sunnah lahu al-ghusl. There's also sunnah for that person to also make a ghusl. Any questions about that? Pass out, not going to sleep. If a person passes out, right? There's a difference between going to sleep and passing out. And according to this here, if a person sleeps, you have to make wudu. You don't have to make a ghusl after you wake up from sleeping. But if a person loses consciousness, they say it's sunnah for that person to make a ghusl. It's sunnah for that person to make a ghusl. Now, wal ghusl. So now we're going to talk about the different ways of making a ghusl. It says wal ghuslul kamil. So there are two ways of making a ghusl. The first type is called a ghuslul kamil, which is considered a complete ghusl, which means it contains in it sunnah and that which is obligatory. And then there's another ghusl called a ghuslul mujzi, a ghusl mujzi. A mujzi ghusl is doing that which is obligatory, and that's it, nothing additional. All right. So now we're going to talk about how a person makes a ghusl kamil, a complete ghusl. Al ghusl kamil, a complete ghusl. The first thing you do is an yanwi, that you have your intention. What is your intention when you're making a ghusl? What is your intention? Grab Saeed. What is your intention? So if you're making a ghusl, what intention do you have? What's your niyyah? Purify yourself. Okay. So the intention is to purify yourself. The second one. The first thing is yanwi thumma yusammi. So you want to make your intention to purify yourself, right? Then the next thing after that is you're going to yusammi. Yusammi means what? You're going to say Bismillah, right? So you're going to make your intention for purification, and then you're going to say Bismillah. This Bismillah, is it wajib or is it sunnah? Wajib if you remember it, and if you forget about it, then it's not wajib if you forget, obviously, right? So this is not one of those things that you have to, if you forget to say the basmala, you lose your whole ghusl because you forgot. All right. But if you think about it, then it's definitely is wajib. We spoke about that when we make wudu, right? All right. It says the first thing is yaksulu yadehi thalathan. First thing you do is wash your hands 3 times. So let's assume you got the shower on. You wash your hands 3 times. Ask Said if we have a mud in there. Listen, ask him, do we have a mud? right? So the first thing you do is you wash your hands 3 times, right? You wash your hands 3 times. After that, it says, وَمَا لَوَّثَهُ. And then you wash the area that has been saturated or impurities touched, right? So you wash your private area. You wash that, right? So you wash your hands 3 times. All right. So you wash your private area, right? You wipe the nedges off of your private area, etc., whatever that which is not pure or not clean, right? Then they say, وَيَتَوَضَّأُ. You're going to make a complete wudu. So you wash your hands 3 times, you wash your private area, then you're going to make wudu, right? After that, وَيَحْثَى عَلَى رَأْسِهِ ثَلَاثًا وَيُرْوِيهُ. That you're going to allow the water to hit your head over your body 3 times. The water hit your head 3. Now, here's the thing. We have showers, so it's not like people are making ghusl out of a basin, right? So you have to understand that they're giving these instructions as if a person doesn't have running water. Does that make sense? So the instructions are as follow. You wash your hands, you clean off your private area, you make wudu, and then you allow the water to touch your head 3 times, right? A person, what does that look like? I take a shower. Okay, so then you can count the 3. But as long as the water's under your head, you count 3 times, all right? 3 times, right? After that, يَؤُمُّ بَدَنَهُ غَسْلًا ثَلَاثًا وَيَدْلُكَهُ, right? وَيَتَيَامَنْ, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to wash, let the water wet your body 3 times, right? But not just touch your body, you're going to wash your body 3 times. And they say you start with your right side. So you're going to wash, clean your right side, and then your left side. And then once you finish doing all of that, it says, وَيَغْسِلُ قَدَمَيْهِ مَكَانًا آخَرَ. Then you wash your feet in a different location. So I'm waiting for a question. Yes. Outside of where you made your ghusl, you wash your feet in a different location. The question should be why? Why do you have to wash your feet in a different location? Because they didn't have running water. Understand that during that time, they will wash in the same area. We have showers with a drain. So you wash, the water goes in a drain. So we got to apply some, Now, if you're in a location where it's not like that, let's say, for example, you're washing in an area and, you're washing your body and you have nowhere else to go and the water's there, then you're going to move from that location and make sure your feet are clean. You're going to wash your feet up to your ankles. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean that you have to, you're in a shower and you got to go somewhere else now to wash your feet. It doesn't make sense. Does that make sense to you? Oh, you do? MashaAllah. MashaAllah. May Allah reward you for that. Yeah, but the thing is, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, there's a drain. So with the drain, it removes the right. طيب ممتاز. That's decent. It says وَيَغْسِلُ قَدَمَيْهِ مَكَانًا آخَرَ, right? So they wash their feet in a different place. So they say وَيَكْفِيَ الظَّنْ فِي الْإِسْبَاغِ. When you washing, right? As long as you think that you reached all the body parts, then that's good. Some of them say if you have a ring, you move your ring around to ensure that the water gets under there and cleans it. Any questions? So that's what we'll call a ghusl kamil or kamal, right? A complete, or a ghusl kamil, a complete ghusl. Any questions about that? All right, I want somebody to run it back. How do you make a ghusl? Well, nobody knows now.
So first you wash your hands 3 times.
The first thing you do
You say Bismillah.
before the bismillah, what do you do?
Make intentions.
Make your
Purify.
intentions. Okay. What's after the intention? Somebody else. We're gonna spread it around. After you make your intentions, what else? Bismillah. Good. What else? Huh? Wash the hands. How many times? 3 times. Good. What else? Good. Whatever the saturated area, the private area. Good. What else? What's after that? A complete wudu after that. Okay. That means including washing your feet. Everything. Right? Good. What's after that? Huh? Wash over your head 3 times. Right? What's after that? No. Wash the body 3 times. And start with the right side. Good. And then the last part? Wash your feet in a different location. Yes.
I thought when you make the complete wudu, you didn't save his feet till afterwards.
No, good. MashaAllah. He said he thought you saved the feet to the end. La. With the complete wudu, you make a whole wudu, including washing your feet. And then when you wash your body, you wash your feet again. Excellent. That's part of the ghusl. The first one's part of the wudu. The next one is part of the ghusl. Good. All right. So we clear on that? That's a nice ghusl right there. That's a camel. That's all the sunnah, everything is in that ghusl. That's the best ghusl to make, right? And then we have another ghusl. This ghusl is a little simpler, right? It's called a ghusl mujzi. Mujzi means it will suffice. You might be in a rush. This will suffice. It says al mujzi'u and yanwi. The first thing is you have to have the intention. And why you sammi, and you have to say the basmala. Wa ya'umma badanahu bil ghusli. Now, what's the difference between a ghuslu wal ghusli? Are they the same? It says ya'umma badanahu. You cover the entire body with al ghusl. What does that mean? A ghusl here is water. A ghusl is the act of making a ghusl. A ghusl with a fatha, this is for those who study Arabic, is water. This is the water that you're using to make the ghusl. It's called a ghusl, right? So it says that you start off, you have your intention. After your intention, you say Bismillah. After you say Bismillah, you ensure that you wet your entire body 1 time. You wet your entire body 1 time. Now, when you wet your body, the ulama also mentioned you have to make tamadmada wa istinshaq as well. Right? But just one. Is that clear? It sounds easy, right? This is called the ghuslu mujzi. Any questions? All right. So, you guys see this here? You know what this is? We talk about this during zakat. We'll break this out during the year when it's time for zakat, right? What is this? A mud, right? How much capacity can this mud hold? What is it? Approximately what? Now, 2 hands put together inside of one is called a mud. This here, as we mentioned before, this here is called a mud nabawi. So this has the exact hand size of the Prophet ﷺ inside of this mud. Okay? So the author says, وَيَتَوَضَّأُ بِمُدٍّ. The Prophet ﷺ, we're going to talk about the amount of water that was used to make wudu. This right here is all the water that the Prophet ﷺ would use to make wudu. Can you imagine making wudu with just a handful of water? Or it reached the amount of a mud. This is how much water the Prophet ﷺ would use to make wudu. Has anyone ever made wudu with a water bottle? Did you use the whole water bottle? No. The next one. It says, وَيَغْتَسِلُ بِسَاعَةٍ. And he would use a sa'a to make a ghusl. What is a sa'a? A sa'a is 4 of these. 4 of these are equal to 1 sa'a. Right? 4 of these are equal to 1 sa'a. So the Prophet ﷺ will make a ghusl with the amount of 4 of these. Okay? It says, فَإِنْ أَسْبَقَ بِأَقَلٍ أَوْ نَوَى بِغُسْلِهِ الْحَدَثَيْنِ أَجْزَأَهُ. If a person makes wudu or a ghusl, if you make wudu with less than this, or if you make a ghusl with less than a sa'a, it will suffice. Likewise, if a person makes a ghusl, and he says his intention was to remove the minor and the major impurity, both of those intentions, then this will also suffice. وَيُسَنُّ لِجُنُوبٍ غَسْلُ فَرْجِهِ. So it's also sunnah. Let's say, for example, a person is in a state of janaba. And janaba is what? What is janaba? Sexual impurity, right? So it's sunnah that if a person is in a state of sexual impurity and they don't make a ghusl right away, let's say they're sitting around, they don't make a ghusl. He said that it is sunnah for that person to wash their private area. Wash their private area. Even if they don't go make a ghusl yet, wash their private area. And it's also sunnah to make wudu if they're going to eat. It's sunnah to make wudu before they eat. And it says, وَنَوْمٍ. It's also sunnah to make wudu before you go to sleep. And it's also sunnah to make wudu وَمُعَاوَدَةِ الْوَطْءِ. If they wanted to come back and have intercourse again, they should also make wudu or wash their private parts. And with that, that is now, mind you, Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni is a summarized version of this chapter. If you go into more of the more detailed books of fiqh, this chapter or this section, it becomes extremely expansive. There's a lot of nuances to the chapter, well, every chapter for that matter. But the scholars of Islam, they give you something called shay'an for shay'an. If you study the book called Umdat al-Fiqh, they will cover this in 1/2 of a page. The book chapter of Ghusl, you finish it, okay, I get it. Real small. Then you move to the next book higher than that, they give you some more information. Oh, okay. Then you move to another book higher than that, they get slightly more information. Then you move to Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni, then you get even more information. Then you move to a book like Al-Kafi. It gives you even more information with the lil in different positions. And then you go to Al-Mughni, where it becomes like an ocean, right? The scholars of Islam, they give you small bits and pieces of information so you can process. I understand studying some of this stuff, it may seem foreign. You never heard it before. It might even be confusing, but it's okay. You come back, you read it. For those that have the book, you go back, you look through the book, you read through it again. If you have questions, you come back and ask the questions. The goal is that you may not take the position of the author because there are other positions of other scholars, but at least you can say, I understand the position of the author. Even if I follow a different position from another scholar, it's okay, right? What we're studying here is how to understand the speech of the ulama, how to understand the speech of the scholars in the past. Even if you don't necessarily understand why, as you study more, you'll begin to know why, because now you're going to start understanding evidence. Why did they say that? Well, it's evidence for that. Well, how come they didn't mention it? Because you wouldn't understand it. What do you mean I can't? It's not that you can't comprehend the evidence. It's just that it's a lot. We could sit here and read about all the evidence for one issue, and you wouldn't even finish the whole chapter because now you're debating over the dalil that's being used. Does that make sense? So like I said, this here, the next thing we're going to cover, inshallah, is the chapter of tayammum. And tayammum is a lot. And then we're going to talk about how to remove impurities. And then we're going to cover the book of menses. Once we finish those three, then we're going to go into the book of salat. And the book of salat is a lot. But I ask everyone to be patient, take your time, learn the information because it will benefit you. It will benefit you. This is why this is something that will help you and aid you as you continue to study about Islam. Also, as we mentioned, if anyone can get this book, this is a really good translation of just the text by Musa Ferber. This is probably the translation is very good. Or we get the other one from Sheikh Saleh Fawzan that's also been translated. How many volumes is that, Sheikh? There's 2 volumes. Is it 2 volumes in one book or is it 2 separate books? We had that book. I don't know. Is that mine? That's yours? Oh, all right. Kind of looks similar. You sure? Oh, all right. Alhamdulillah. You got a question? All right, well, let's go back to the book, though. I want to change the subject. Let me. No, I don't want a question. I want to show the people the book. The people that's online that don't have it. This book here is one that Sheikh Saleh Fawzan or that he did an explanation for. This is also a good one. So you have this and this. Now, to me, the translation in this is slightly better to me. But that's just me, my opinion. And it doesn't mean that this one is bad. However, there is one issue in this book that I found a couple classes ago. The author translated something wrong. I mentioned, I forget what class that was in. But if anyone who follows, you can go back and check it out. But in the event, this is what we're doing. Any questions? Go ahead, Sheikh. I'm sorry.
If it was like a large body of water, purified water, so like a lake or rivers, I made the media and I said this and I jumped in with the intention to purify me. Would that be the same?
It's funny you say that because the Ghusl Mujzi, it says, يغسل الظهر جميع البدن وما في حكمه من غير ضرر كالفم والأنف والبشرة التي تحت الشعور. When we actually studied this issue in the university, that issue right there, Ghusl Mujzi, it started talking about, and this is what I mean when you get into more details, right? It started talking about a man jumping into the water and start pulling himself out one by one, and the intention was to make a ghusl. And they get into all these different nuances. Some of the ulama say, yeah, it will suffice if you have that intention before you get in the water, you jump in and get right out. And some say that this will suffice. Some say that this will suffice, and Allah knows best. But like I said, when you study the more detailed books, there's another book. There's a book called Kashaf al-Qina', right? This is a book that in Saudi Arabia, many of the judges of Islam use. It talks about that issue in great detail. There's so many of these small issues that you look at, they just ran through it, but it's a lot of commentary on it, tons of commentary. And so we try not to get into a lot of the commentary because you can get lost. You're just going down a rabbit hole, right? And by the time you finish, you'll be confused. And then I might be confused. And then everyone's confused. And then it's like, why'd you even open that door? So what we try to do is keep it concise, mention some of the differences of opinion that might be beneficial to us, applicable to where we come from and how we process information. Now, I may be wrong in doing it that way, but this is what I see to be the best way. Until somebody tell me it's wrong and they don't think so, then we got to do what we see as best, and Allah knows best. If anyone have any questions? Anyone have any questions? Like, you sure? No questions? Yes. So the brother said, loss of consciousness. Do seizures fall into loss of consciousness? I'm not that educated on seizures to know if a person, when he has a seizure, do they not necessarily lose consciousness? Is not. I don't know. Allahu Alam. But understand, if the person lost consciousness, then it may fall into that. It may. If they don't lose consciousness, then probably not. And Allah knows best. Any other questions? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. What's the day? Monday? Thursday, right? This week went by fast, man. Fast.